We're down now in this country to only 60% self-sufficiency on food. I think it's very difficult to say to a consumer, you must pay more for your food.
In 2008, while the world's banks were collapsing, Jeremy Clarkson spent £6 million on 1,000 acres of ordinary Oxfordshire mud. His first-year profit was £144. Everyone laughed. Nobody in British business is laughing now. That same farm quietly grew into an empire. A television deal, a farm shop, a brewery that turned down £50 million, and a pub built to lose money on purpose. In this video, let's discuss how a joke of an investment became one of the smartest business moves in modern Britain. Why Clarkson bought a farm. In 2008, October 2008, the global financial system is on its knees. Banks are collapsing overnight. Hedge funds that had existed for decades are unwinding in a matter of days. Every newspaper in Britain is running some variation of the same headline, and every financial advisor with a client on the phone is giving some version of the same instruction. Sell, protect, wait. Wealthy individuals across the country are doing one of two things: liquidating assets as fast as the market will absorb them, or sitting on cash, waiting for a bottom that nobody can yet see. Jeremy Clarkson did neither. While Lehman Brothers was still collapsing in the background, Clarkson quietly bought roughly 1,000 acres of Oxfordshire farmland for £6 million. There was no press release. No television cameras followed him to the signing. Just a purchase, a set of keys, and a farm manager who was already working the land and would, years later, become one of the most recognizable faces in British agriculture. The land itself was unremarkable by Cotswold standards. Productive, pretty, in the way English farmland always is, but not the sort of estate that makes agricultural agents reach for superlatives. £6 million was a fair price, perhaps even a generous one. So why would a television presenter with no farming background sink £6 million into an ordinary field during the worst financial collapse in a generation? The answer had almost nothing to do with farming, and everything to do with a quirk of British tax law that very few people outside of old landed families. Agricultural property relief allows farmland in Britain to pass to the next generation entirely free of inheritance tax. Not at a reduced rate, but free, in full. For a man already building serious wealth through television, that single fact changes the entire calculation. Buy farmland, let it appreciate, and when it eventually passes to your children, the government receives nothing. Clarkson wrote about the logic openly in the Times, with the kind of cheerful transparency of someone who wanted the reasoning understood. He said that land is a better investment than any bank can offer, that the government does not get a penny of it when he dies, and that the price of food can only go up. He was not wrong on any of the 3 points. The original £6 million purchase is now conservatively estimated at somewhere around £12.5 million in land value alone, based on comparable Cotswolds farmland. And that figure sits before a single one of the businesses built on top of it is even counted. He more than doubled his money simply by holding the asset, not through farming brilliance, not through television fame, through the oldest wealth preservation strategy in the English countryside: land held quietly, generation after generation. Consider what everyone else with comparable resources was doing at that exact moment. Private equity firms were freezing redemptions. Property funds were suspending withdrawals entirely, trapping investors who wanted their money out and could not get it. Even government bonds, traditionally the safest asset available, were being repriced hour by hour as confidence evaporated across every major economy simultaneously. Farmland, by contrast, barely registered a ripple. What could possibly justify holding an asset nobody could quickly convert into cash in the middle of the worst liquidity crisis in a generation? Nobody was panic selling fields. Nobody was demanding emergency liquidity from a holding that could not be sold within a decade, even if someone tried. That illiquidity, which looks like a weakness on paper, was in practice the entire point. an asset nobody could force him to sell at the worst possible moment, appreciating quietly while headlines screamed about everything else. Skeptics at the time argued that a television personality with no agricultural background had no business making a bet of this size on an industry known for thin margins and unpredictable weather. Farming, after all, is one of the few sectors where a single bad season can erase years of careful planning. So why would anyone with genuine financial sophistication choose to enter it deliberately, in the middle of a crisis, with no relevant experience at all? Clarkson was not, however, betting on farming succeeding. He was betting on land holding its value regardless of whether the farming itself succeeded at all, a distinction that turned out to matter enormously once the television cameras arrived and the farming became, in commercial terms, almost beside the point. But look at the timing again, because that is where the real story begins. In 2008, the prevailing wisdom among people with serious money was diversification into financial instruments, equities, structured products, hedge fund allocations. The sophisticated money, as it was called at the time, was flowing into the City of London, not into muddy fields in Oxfordshire. Clarkson went in the exact opposite direction, and in doing so, stumbled onto a principle that old landed families in Britain have understood for centuries and that modern wealth managers rarely mention. Financial markets can be manipulated, frozen, or wiped out overnight. An acre of English farmland has never once been worth nothing. It has never been delisted. It has never been frozen by a regulator at 3 in the morning. It simply sits there, quietly appreciating, generation after generation, immune to the panic that consumes everything built on paper. The aristocracy built entire dynasties on that single insight. Clarkson, the son of a toy salesman from Doncaster, with no inherited land and no family estate, arrived at the same conclusion through an entirely different route, which is, in its own way, a remarkable achievement. But the land, as it turned out, was only ever the foundation. What came next is where an ordinary farm purchase became something the rest of British agriculture is still trying to understand. The TV show that built a business empire. When Amazon commissioned a television show following Clarkson's attempt to run the farm himself, the response from established British agriculture was polite skepticism at best. A television presenter, stumbling through harvests, arguing with planning inspectors, getting things spectacularly wrong for the entertainment of viewers who had never stood within 50 miles of a combine harvester, mildly diverting perhaps, unlikely to last beyond a single series. What nobody in the industry understood, because nobody had ever needed to understand it, was what it actually means to have a television show watched by millions of people across dozens of countries, where every single episode functions as an advertisement for your farm that costs you nothing to produce and that viewers actively choose to watch. The farm was never really the business. The farm was the film set. Every tractor breakdown became content. Every council refusal became a storyline. Every failed crop, every argument between Clarkson and his farm manager, every moment of theatrical frustration, all of it doubled as entertainment and marketing simultaneously. Clarkson had built, whether by accident or by instinct, one of the most effective agricultural marketing operations in British broadcasting history. What advertising agency could ever replicate a campaign that people actively pay a subscription fee to watch? How much is that actually worth? Reported figures suggest Amazon paid somewhere in the region of £160 million across the first 3 seasons of the farming series alone, a figure that dwarfs almost anything else in British factual television. The show itself became one of the platform's most watched original productions in the United Kingdom. And here is the detail that separates this from ordinary television income. The farm might barely break even on its own agricultural operations in a given year, but the show about the farm is where the real financial architecture sits. Every tractor breakdown that costs money on the farming side earns multiples of that loss on the television side. The failure, in a strange and counterintuitive way, became the product. Consider the arithmetic for a moment. A traditional advertising campaign for a comparable retail and hospitality operation might run into the millions of pounds annually, with no guarantee that a single viewer converts into a paying customer. Clarkson's arrangement flipped that model entirely on its head. Viewers paid Amazon for the privilege of watching the advertisement, and a meaningful share of them then drove for hours to spend money at the business being advertised. No traditional marketing department could have designed a funnel that efficient, because no traditional marketing department controls the actual content people choose to watch for pleasure. Visitors began arriving, not in modest numbers, but in quantities that required police to manage queues, stretching for miles along country lanes that had not seen that kind of disruption in living memory. What does it say about modern retail when a jar of honey can generate a 3-mile traffic queue without a single pound spent on paid promotion? People drove for hours to stand in a field in Oxfordshire and buy that jar of honey, chasing a feeling they could not entirely put into words, a sense of connection to something that felt, in a media landscape that had largely stopped bothering, genuinely honest. That feeling is worth an extraordinary amount of money, and Clarkson had it in abundance precisely because none of it was manufactured. The planning battles were real. The crop failures were real. The 144 pounds of profit in year one was real, and painfully so. Agricultural commentators noted, with a certain wry admiration, that Clarkson had done more for public awareness of British farming in a single series than 3 decades of conventional countryside broadcasting had managed. The British Farming Awards gave him formal recognition for raising the profile of the industry, an organization with every professional reason to be skeptical of a television celebrity playing at their trade, choosing instead to hand him their award. That kind of credibility cannot be manufactured. It can only be found and then filmed. The farm shop began, quite literally, as a shed with some potatoes in it and a hand-painted sign. Within weeks of the first series airing, the queue outside that shed stretched further than anyone involved had thought to plan for. And what happened next turned an ordinary roadside stall into one of the more improbable retail success stories in recent British business history. The farm shop that shouldn't have worked. The economics of the farm shop should not, by any conventional retail logic, have worked. The produce carries a premium price. The product range is deliberately limited to what can be sourced within 16 miles, a restriction originally imposed as a planning condition by the local district council, intended to limit the shop's commercial footprint, and later described as one of the better things to happen to the business, because it forced the discovery of suppliers who would never otherwise have been found. The opening hours are unpredictable. The parking is inadequate. On paper, this is a retail operation designed to fail. And yet, within a single year, the shop's assets reportedly grew from roughly £44,000 to more than £1 million, one of the more remarkable retail turnarounds in recent memory, for a business with no marketing budget, no advertising spend, and a product range dictated by whatever happened to be in season within a 16-mile radius. That is not a hobby quietly becoming profitable. That is a business being born in mud, in a field, with a slightly bewildered farm manager looking on. What is the shop actually selling? Because it clearly is not honey, or jam, or a loaf of bread at twice the supermarket price. People do not queue for 3 hours to visit an ordinary farm shop. They queue because visiting Diddley Squat is, for a particular kind of viewer, an act of participation in a story they have already been watching unfold on their television screens for years. They are buying a connection to something they feel they already know. A jar of honey priced well above what it would cost at a conventional supermarket becomes, in that context, a perfectly reasonable price for that connection. And the length of the queue every single week is the proof. Compare that to a conventional farm shop chain, expanding through debt-financed store openings and national supplier contracts designed to minimize cost per unit. Diddley Squat did the precise opposite at every turn and grew faster than most of them regardless. There was no loyalty program, no email newsletter, no seasonal discount code circulated to encourage repeat purchases. The Q did the work that an entire marketing department would ordinarily be paid to do, and it did it for free, every single week, regardless of the weather. The local council, meanwhile, continued refusing planning permission for almost every expansion Clarkson proposed. They refused the car park. They issued enforcement notices that shut down the restaurant. They declined application after application, citing the area's designation as one of outstanding natural beauty and the impact of commercial activity on a rural setting. What the council did not seem to grasp, at least not until much later, was that every single refusal became an episode. Every enforcement notice became a storyline. Every planning officer's report turned into drama that millions of people watched. Drama that drove more visitors to the very operation the council was attempting to restrain. How many businesses in Britain could survive, let alone thrive, on a foundation of constant regulatory rejection? Was the council actually regulating anything? Or were they simply writing the next episode for free? The council believed it held the leverage in that relationship. In practice, it was providing the narrative, and Clarkson was the only party in the arrangement who understood the game being played. He was not fighting the council. He was being fed content by it, week after week, refusal after refusal, at no cost to himself whatsoever. But the shop, however successful, was still only the visible surface of the operation. The real financial engine, the part of the business that did not depend on a single council decision, a single planning permission, or a single television season, was being built quietly a short distance away, out of barley grown in the very fields the councillors kept refusing to let anyone park a car next to. The brewery that terrified the industry. Celebrity drinks brands follow an extremely predictable pattern. A famous name licenses itself to an existing drinks company. That company does the actual manufacturing, the actual distribution, the actual work. The celebrity shows up for launch events, collects a percentage, and moves on. It is a licensing arrangement dressed up as entrepreneurship, and the drinks industry knows exactly how to manage that kind of deal. Acquire the brand once it reaches a certain scale, fold it into existing infrastructure, and extract the value. Hawkstone Lager did not follow that pattern, and that single decision is what made it dangerous to the rest of the industry. Clarkson built an actual brewery, with actual brewing equipment and actual supply chains. The barley comes from his own farm, and from neighboring farms within a few miles. Not from wherever happens to be cheapest that quarter on the global commodity market, but from farmers in Oxfordshire and Gloucestershire, who now have a guaranteed buyer at a fair, fixed price, rather than being left at the mercy of volatile international grain markets. By recent counts, Hawkstone had reportedly posted sales figures in the tens of millions of pounds, with year-on-year growth reported well above 100%. Placing it among the fastest-growing private companies in Britain, according to independent rankings. The lager is now stocked in major national supermarket chains and in thousands of pubs across the country. An advertising campaign featuring farmers giving an enthusiastic endorsement of the product was banned by the Advertising Standards Authority and was then watched by well over 1 million people online almost immediately afterward. Is there a more efficient form of marketing available anywhere than a government regulator accidentally amplifying your message for free? Major breweries spend enormous sums attempting to manufacture exactly the kind of authenticity Hawkstone arrived at almost by accident. Heritage branding, artisanal packaging, carefully worded provenance claims on the label. All of it exists because consumers increasingly want to believe their beer came from somewhere specific, from someone real. Hawkstone did not need to manufacture that story, because the story was already true, documented on camera, season after season, in a way no marketing agency could fabricate convincingly, even with an unlimited budget. That authenticity gap is precisely why a £50 million acquisition offer reportedly existed in the first place, and precisely why accepting it would have destroyed the very thing being purchased. Why would a major brewer want to buy a business that keeps embarrassing regulators and still keeps growing? Because the growth is real, and because the model behind it, small batch, locally sourced, vertically integrated, is something the major players cannot simply replicate at their existing scale without abandoning the very efficiencies that make them profitable. The brewery reportedly now employs over 50 people directly. It has expanded multiple times in just a few years. Its estimated valuation has climbed into the tens of millions of pounds, entirely separate from the value of the farmland itself. These are two distinct businesses feeding each other. The farm grows the barley, the brewery makes the lager, the television show advertises both, and the farm shop sells both, with every part of the enterprise reinforcing every other part. Here is the detail that separates Hawkstone from almost every other celebrity drinks brand in Britain. A major international brewer is reportedly said to have made a private approach with an acquisition offer somewhere around £50 million. Clarkson reportedly declined within 24 hours, because without the local sourcing, without the transparent production process, without the specific Oxfordshire barley and the specific farmers who supply it, Hawkstone is simply another lager on a crowded shelf. The business model is the brand. The two cannot be separated. You cannot buy one without destroying the other. And the major brewers seem to have understood, somewhat uncomfortably, that they were not dealing with a simple licensing arrangement at all. What does it mean when the safest path for an industry giant is simply to leave a growing competitor alone, rather than risk destroying what makes it valuable by trying to own it? The final piece of the empire was not a product at all. It was a place, a pub, built on a business model so deliberately unprofitable on paper that most restaurant consultants would have advised against it entirely. The flywheel that changed British farming. The pub, entirely British-sourced, down to black pepper from Cornwall, priced at roughly 10 times the imported alternative, and a wine list that reportedly caused the accountant considerable distress, was, according to Clarkson himself, a brilliant way of turning £100 into 94. It loses money on food with almost aristocratic indifference to the mathematics, and recovers that loss entirely on Hawkstone lager, where the margin stays intact. The pub exists to showcase British farming, provide a filming location, and sell lager at full margin to customers who arrive for the beef and leave having bought the beer. Would any restaurant consultant sign off on a menu designed to lose money by choice? There is no imported ketchup, nothing sourced from outside the British Isles, and every dish is built around a specific British farmer and a specific season, slower and costlier than any conventional pub, which is precisely the point. People do not queue for hours to visit an ordinary pub. They queue to visit the one that appears to be standing up for something, even when that stance is visibly costing its owner money. A large touring marquee, originally used for a separate motoring series, now sits permanently on the grounds as extra retail space, so visitors who cannot secure a table inside can still spend money just outside it. And then there is the farm manager, already working the land when Clarkson bought it, who has since become one of the more unexpected success stories British farming has produced. What made that rise possible was not manufacturing a character for television, but recognizing that the most authentic thing available was already standing in the field. Audiences can tell the difference between something performed and something real from the very first frame. Was any of this ever actually about farming? Measured not in revenue but in effect, this is a business that created rural jobs in communities quietly losing them. A guaranteed market for barley farmers who once had no choice but to accept whatever the commodity markets offered. And a farm shop that proved people will travel an unreasonable distance to buy something they believe in. British agriculture has spent decades losing younger workers to cities. A single television series, built around a man who kept getting the basics wrong in full view of millions, did more to reverse that narrative than most industry campaigns with real advertising budgets. What happens to an industry when the business everyone assumed was a joke understands consumer trust better than the professionals who spent decades studying it? That is not a coincidence. It is the result of choosing honesty over polish, even when it made the numbers look worse in the short term. None of the individual pieces, the shop, the brewery, the pub, the television deal, would have been especially remarkable alone. What made this different was the refusal to treat any of them as separate projects. Each one was built to strengthen every other part of the same structure. None of it happened according to a business plan. Return to 2008, to the £6 million, the 1,000 acres, and the friends who assumed he had lost his mind. Nobody could see it then, because it had not happened yet. That the farm was never actually a farm. It was a platform. Television made the shop viable. The shop built the brand. The brand launched the brewery. The brewery funded the pub. The pub generated more content. The content brought more visitors. The visitors bought more lager. It is not a farm. It is a flywheel, and the £144 of year one was simply the moment it started turning. None of this was supposed to work. A field nobody wanted, a first-year profit that barely covered dinner, a council that said no to almost everything, and somehow all of it became a flywheel that fed itself. The television advertised the shop built the brand launched a brewery that walked away from £50 million. The brewery funded a pub built to lose money on purpose. Every rejection turned into content. Every failure turned into fuel. That £144 was never the punchline. It was the beginning. If this changed how you see him, hit like, drop a comment down below, and subscribe.